This is a very special variant C2E2 edition of I Read Comic Books. I'm here, Mike Rappin, as always, your host. I don't know how to start the show because I've been walking around and staring and talking at people for the last 48 hours. It's insane. But I'm joined here this week by two fantastic individuals, Nick White.
Hey.
And Brian Murray.
Hello. We
are talking in person, which means Xander has to do almost no editing outside of the part where we burp and cough and fart and things like that. But we're here at C2E2 to talk about our experience in the last 24 hours in Chicago. I think it's been about 24 hours since you arrived, Brian. So,
yeah.
And Nick, I think you got here about the same time, maybe a couple hours early.
We actually ran into them at the parking structure.
Yeah. So
yeah, that was weird.
It's been a real time. You know, we've been hanging out. We've been walking the con. We went out and got very spicy Caribbean food last night. Every single person from I Read Comic Books is here, and it's the most bizarre thing I could have ever imagined to see all of you individual people that I know from various aspects of my life now in this same vicinity. It's super surreal. But I wanted to talk to you guys about how your con experience has been. Nick, I know this is your first big con. Brian, this used to be like our mainstay con for a really long time. What have been your thoughts and experiences? Because I want to do this with a handful of other people as well. So we're going to try to keep it a little short. And I think this is all going to get pieced together in one big episode. But anyways, Nick, let's start with you. What's been your experience with the con so far?
Yeah, well, I mean, I went into this with a little bit of apprehension because I've been having some issues with my feet. And when I went into my meet with my physician's assistant, she's like, try not to be on your feet for super prolonged periods of time. And I was like, great news.
Joke's on you, idiot.
Let me tell you where I am headed in 4 days. And I told her about it, and she's like, well, just don't put yourself in bad situations. And I was like, okay, thank you, I guess. Is this like a life thing in general, or is this about this? Are you casting aspersions on things beyond this con? But
then your actual nurse came in, and you were like, who was I talking to this entire time?
Yeah. Wait, who are you? Oh, I was the last patient in this waiting room. I just haven't left.
It's Nick from the future.
Oh God, no wiser than the current one. I've been really shocked with how short the lines have been, but I think also a lot of that experience boils down to being here on Friday and knowing that the shit was going to get real on Saturday.
Yeah, and
sort of hedging my bets accordingly. And I mean, you can see that if you walked around today. I don't know if you guys were looking, but a fuck ton of Saturday badges.
Oh yeah,
Saturday badges all over. Yeah,
that's the thing though. I think we're recording this as of 3:00 Central Time right now, and so our experience on Saturday so far has been kind of walking around 11 or 10:30, 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock.
Yeah.
And it's not really the peak times for the convention. I think.
God, really?
Well, right. That's the thing. Right after lunch is when people are like, okay, I had my lunch maybe in the city. Maybe I live outside the city, and I'm coming in. I'm gonna have lunch downtown, and then I'm gonna take the train, go to the convention center. So after 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, that's when the con starts to really ramp up, and then by 7 o'clock, it's insane. Which is why we're not at the con right now.
Yeah, I pieced out around 1 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, and that was chaotic in itself. I mean, when we went in around 11 o'clock, the fucking line to get in was absurd. But again, I feel like we've experienced this before, me and you, Brian. Nick, I was really curious to know what your initial thoughts were on top of all this, because I know we're still focusing on that, but I don't remember what my first big con was like, and I want to live vicariously through you again. I mean, has your whole thing been nonstop chaos, or do you feel like there's some structure and order to it? Because I remember early C2E2s, they were just kind of a mess.
Yeah,
and they were guessing every year.
It was a madhouse.
Yeah, this year there seems to be a little bit more order, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, let's not lie. I've been a man with a plan here, and so I've got books that need to be signed, and I've mapped out where everybody is, and so on Friday I made sort of an order to try to get autographs from the people that I knew I did not want to stand in line for on Saturday. And I think we got out just perfectly today because you could tell the like celebrity autograph shit was starting to like ramp up as we were leaving today.
Oh, I didn't see that.
They were like, I could hear them announcing, the people from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and everybody was clapping and you'd see these massive lines. And I'm like, I am not here for that.
Well, I think you're thinking of the Marvel booth, which is Chaos Incarnate.
Yeah,
where they're just like, hey, we're going to give away a bookmark that Paul Rudd touched with his butt. And
we're
then
not
like, oh my fucking God! People are losing their minds
and then they're
over
like,
that stuff.
We're not 100% sure that happened, but still.
Yeah, exactly.
But so it's been really interesting comparing Friday to Saturday in terms of the crowds, in terms of the lines, in terms of the waits. But it's been a pleasant experience so far. I've never waited for more than, gosh, I want to say 5 minutes to get shit signed, maybe 10. So
yeah, I mean, but I think you're also not getting in line for like the Chris Claremonts and the Andy Kubers and stuff like that.
Exactly right. Like I'm not like queuing up for fucking Neil Adams. I saw him from a distance yesterday, which I mean, I'm not a Neil Adams person, so
Sure. Brian, how about you? So you've been to this con before, right? You've been to a handful of other cons, like local cons. How do you think C2E2 has changed or gotten better or gotten worse, in your opinion?
Well, it definitely hasn't gotten any cooler because it is a million goddamn degrees down on the con floor.
It is.
I have sweat my way through like 4 shirts since we got here yesterday.
But I will say there hasn't been like the con stink that everybody talks about. I feel
that's true.
I feel like things have been easy breezy, beautiful. Cover girl. I mean, maybe just easy and breezy. Maybe the cover girl part isn't. Look, I was just rolling with the rhyme.
There has definitely been some con stank. Yeah. I know I was in a panel yesterday on female forward fantasy fiction, which was an amazing panel, by the way. It was very inspiring. I got a lot of the stuff they talked about really made me want to go home and write some more.
Yeah.
Which I haven't really done since I spent, $40,000 getting a degree in creative writing.
Right.
Good plan. I'm a strategist. And, there was definitely some, you can tell because it was a late in the day con, so people had been walking around, really getting a good funk going.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just sit in an enclosed space with them.
Right. No fans. It's just, stagnant air.
I was just because, I was sitting in there with just, sweat running down my back. I was like, I know that I showered and put deodorant on. And I know that I'm in trouble. I imagine that people who were less fastidious did not. Well, they probably had a fine time, but I didn't. I was too olfactorily aware of them.
I see. But yeah, that kind of brings me to another thing that I wanted to ask you guys about. I have in my old age, I have kind of started to avoid bigger panels or panels in general because I just don't like the idea of waiting in line to sit at something that might not be that interesting. It sounds like, though, Brian, you had a pretty good time at this fantasy fiction.
Female forward fantasy fiction.
Thank you. 4 Fs. That's way
Brian
too many.
Only goes to alliterative panels.
And Nick, I know you went to a couple panels as well. I mean, has the panel experience for you guys at this convention been pretty good, or is it hit or miss?
Go ahead, Brian.
That's the only one that I've been to so far. I was going to go to another one at 3:00 this afternoon. And then I looked at it and saw that Cory Doctorow was on the guest list for the panel.
Okay.
And I was like, well, I don't feel like standing in line for 45 minutes to get a seat at this.
Yeah, to be the guy that sits behind the pillar so you can half see the stage, right?
Yeah, so instead, I took a quick nap, and now I'm recording this podcast. I think I made the right choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that avoiding, the big Marvel panel and stuff like that is always a good call at conventions like this, because all that information is going to be available online.
Immediately.
Within 30 minutes of the panel being over.
Yeah.
Whereas the one that I went to, I got to meet these 4 women authors, and they talked about their books and how they feature women in their books and, what tropes they're sick and tired of seeing, how they're working to break those tropes, what other fiction you can look into. And then afterwards, they had a signing. So I was able to go down there and buy some of their books and get them signed and talk to them for a minute.
What was the signing experience like? If I know, Nick, I do want to hear about your panel stuff, but
yeah, no.
What was the signing experience like for you? Because I know when I went to New York City Comic Con, there was a couple people that my fiance Kelly wanted to get like a book signed for it. So she bought a copy, and then she also brought another copy of a book that she had. And to me, like, it was quick. It was very easy. We even got to spend like 5-10 minutes talking to the author. Was it the same for that here? Were you able to like actually spend time with them, or was it like sign the book, move on because there's so many people in line?
You definitely could have spent more time than I did, because I didn't have a whole lot to say because I'm very bad at confrontation.
Sure.
Like any time that I'm around somebody who isn't a friend, I immediately melt down a little bit.
Right. Okay.
But there were clearly people in line who did not have that problem. And that's why I got left behind by my own darling wife, who decided to leave with Xander and Kate Scotchless instead of wait for me.
Gotcha.
Because I was like 2 people in line behind them, but I was probably 8 minutes behind them time-wise.
Oh, I see. Just because the folks were actually having the longer conversations. Yeah. Gotcha.
But I mean, all these authors were incredibly nice.
Good. That's good
and
to hear.
Incredibly young.
Oh,
like,
yeah?
one of them was like, because I'm an old lady at 28. And I was like, oh, fuck you. You're wildly successful at 28 years old.
Right,
Like,
right.
Someone's just like, I'm 12 years old. Brian's like, wait, you're not an author. You're just lost.
Cool. Well, that's good to hear. I mean, it's. I know that signings can be super weird sometimes. Like, I've heard all sorts of mixed reviews, but I think it's the experience has changed for creators to say like, hey, I'm sitting down the sign. There's no one that's going to be dickish to you because they realize that can dramatically affect your sales. Which doesn't mean that I think people are trying to be fake or anything like that, but
it's definitely a thing though, like especially with the internet. Like, it's very easy for someone's horror story of somebody to get out there, and then suddenly no one wants to buy your shit anymore.
Right. And I mean, and that's assuming someone's going to share that, and there's a whole predicament about like, should you be telling these stories about a one-time thing that could potentially blow up, and then you run into the whole issue of shaming people and yada yada yada. There's a whole episode of John Oliver's TV show that just came out all about that. You can go watch. But anyways, yeah, I mean, it sounds good. I'm glad that you had like a good experience and get to meet these people. But yeah, Nick, how's your panel experience been and everything in this con?
It's been a mixed bag. I went to the Valiant panel yesterday afternoon, where their entire PowerPoint presentation had a meltdown.
I think it was an actual technical problem at the venue. Like, I think McCormick Place, their whole broadcasting system was just busted in that room that we were in.
Yeah, let's be clear. I think it was more on them than Valiant. We got to see McCormick Place people and Valiant people try throughout the duration of the presentation to quietly on the side continue to try multiple things to fix it.
I felt really bad. Yeah,
it was really awkward. And then to make things even weirder or worse, I guess, they had a panel like of Teenie Howard, Alex Packnadel, Cullen Bunn, et cetera, Tim Seeley. And so no artists, but they basically asked the writers on these books to describe the pages from the books that they would have illustrated via a PowerPoint presentation, or maybe would have been improved if they had artists who were describing their own work instead of the writers. So it's just another degree removed.
It was definitely funny because I know that the Valiant guy, the guy who was like representing Valiant as the company, he was trying really hard to engage with everybody because he was not visibly frustrated, but you could tell he was kind of upset that his PowerPoint wasn't working. Because like, when you're in a panel, if there's no PowerPoint, you're just listening to a fucking podcast. Like, you could be doing anything else.
I mean, like, if for some fucking reason you've built your comic book panel not around a PowerPoint, then I guess that works, but
well, it's
what
weird.
Panel hasn't
it's weird because
been built around.
At the end of the day, when
one I went to wasn't.
Yeah,
there you go.
See, but this is what I was gonna say. Like, as much as it would be great to show that art, because that's like a big selling point for new books, especially since Valiant's trying to do this whole thing, and they got all these new creators that are trying to sell these books to people. Like, showing the art is super important for the first 6 minutes of the panel. After that, you're just listening to artists talk over the fucking pages that you've seen for forever. Right. So it's not like it was the end of the world, but I did feel bad because he was so excited about all the books, and he's just like, you guys don't understand how cool this shit looks. Come up to the front of the stage and I will show you all of the panels and all the pages that we had.
Yeah, ultimately it turned into I can still get these images up on my laptop. Come on over and look at my laptop.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he could have said, guys, the PowerPoint's fucked. Whatever, you're gonna find these images on the internet anyway. And at least he took a stance that if you were truly interested, you could at least come on up and take a look. But it was a good panel. They had a little Q&A. People did ask some interesting questions about the DMG acquisition. I was not the one to do it, but somebody answered it, and I just sort of rubbed my hands together, and I was like, "This gonna be good." And thankfully things didn't get real interesting, because obviously that's posed a little bit of an issue for fans. But otherwise that panel went well. I didn't have any problems with it. They had a nice little promo where if you remembered the passcode of PowerPoint fail and you took that down to the Valiant booth downstairs, they gave you a gold cover of the Life and Death of Toyo Harada #1. I was very excited at this prospect, so excited that I rushed downstairs before the Valiant promoters could even get back to their booth, and I had to be told by the Graham Crackers employee, who they were sharing a booth with, the people who will give that to you haven't even returned. How did you get back here so fast?
Nick used his once a day spell to dimension door across the convention center.
I've been power walking at this thing hardcore. Like
your nurse is going to destroy you when you get back to Michigan.
I have not really looked at. I've only taken my socks off in the dark. Let me tell you,
a fact for which we're all grateful.
Yeah.
That's definitely part of my con experience, is looking up and going, where the fuck did Mike go?
Yeah. Hi, welcome to Coming to the Convention with Mike, where when I get mad for people that walk very slow, I just decide to run and push past every single human being in my path. I went to... Tia is tabling with Stephanie Hans right now, so because they're buds, and so at one point they were like, "Hey, could you do us a huge favor? Could you go get us some Starbucks?" And I was like, "Sure, I'm not really doing anything, and I don't mind doing something like as a favor." Yeah. So I went and I waited in line. I checked Twitter and all that stuff. But as soon as I got the Starbucks, I swear to God, to get through the con this morning, it took us 20 minutes just to get to Artist Alley. After I got the Starbucks, I swear by the time I got it and went through the con entrance, I made my way from the entrance all the way to Artist Alley in like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Like I was booking it, and I felt super proud of myself, but you can't do that with other people. You can only do that by yourself.
Starbucks in, elbows out.
Yeah. It's like me holding a tray of Starbucks with some straws, and like, I felt like an important person. Like I was someone's PA, just like, get the fuck out of my way. The director needs his coffee.
Do you know who this is for? This is for Stephanie Hans.
This is for Stephanie fucking Hans. But no, I didn't mind doing it. It was really funny because they were like, holy shit, like what took you so long? Why are you out of breath?
And then Mike just spilled them on the ground.
No, it was
Oops.
Fine.
It's my secret. I'm always out of breath.
Which,
secret.
My con experience so far has been pretty good. I mean, the people that I've talked to, every single creator has been super kind, and not to say that in previous years they weren't, but I think like this year I don't look as nervous, I think, talking to people, so they don't feel like on edge when I'm just like, "Hi, could you sign my fucking books, please?" Which is how I used to do it in the past.
Yeah,
this year, I feel like I'm a little bit less nerve-wracked. But and on top of it, it's like we've come to booth tables with like 3 or 4 people and just be like, "Hey, we're all on this podcast together. Would you like to be on there?" Just throwing stickers and bookmarks at them, which has worked out pretty well. Which I think I have a ton of stickers and stuff left over. We're gonna just be throwing them at people for the rest of the convention time that we're here. But I've enjoyed it. Talked to David Mack for a little bit, Nick and I, and he was like the nicest, most soft-spoken person in the world. Like, for a guy that he does some beautiful covers, and I wish that I could have just sat there and looked at his art all day, but I didn't want to be weird. But we talked to him for a minute about like some of the covers he was doing for Valiant and some of the covers he'd done in the past, and he was just like, "Oh yeah, that was a really fun cover for me to do. I really enjoyed putting that all together. Did you know I have a series coming out with Brian Bendis? We just did a short series." And I was just like, I like had to lean in. I was like trying to be attentive without being creepy. But he was such a nice guy. It was It was so funny. Just the way he talks so slowly and just so nicely, like he was just having a good old time.
He was like very go with the flow, very laid back. You know, I was like handing him the covers. He's like, "This was a good one too. I really like this one." Like I was like half ready to like start handing him books by other people and to see if he would be like, "Yeah, I really enjoyed drawing this one too." That's Frank Miller.
But then we find out that it really has been Mac this whole time.
Yeah. I'm like, that's Frank Miller. He's like, "Joke's on you." And I look in the corner, and like, it's like morphed into that the David Mack little symbol thingy that he puts on his books. So
yeah, it's been pretty fun. I mean, we've been getting hopefully a lot of context to potentially have people on the show, which makes me think we might have to do like a side interview show, given the number of folks that we've talked to. But we'll see about that.
I mean, people have just been very, very nice. Whether it's genuine or not, or whether it's put on by the fact that they understand.
Let's assume that it is.
But and that's where I'm going with this. Let's hope so, because so I've had some good interactions with Gary Brown, Kenneth Rocafort. Who else have I talked to? Yeah, David Mack, as you said, and Daniel Kibblesmith.
Yeah.
Elliot Rahal. Yeah.
Elliot Rahal, what a cool guy. I hope, Elliot, if you're listening to this, you were the coolest guy when we talked to you.
Yeah, he was really happy to have people talk about his books with him. So,
yeah.
I got to thoroughly embarrass myself in front of Jason Howard.
Nice.
Picking up a copy of Trees number 2 and be like, "Hey, can you sign this? By the way, I saw you before at a little comic convention in Michigan. It was at East that East Michigan. It was at Kate, what school are you going to? Michigan State."
Yeah,
and he was very nice. He's like, "Oh yeah, they're going to do that this year again too." So.
Jason,
maybe not this year.
He's such a really kind dude too. I feel every time I talk to him, he's just genuinely like nice in the most honest, earnest way. Truly,
and one of the coolest signatures I've ever seen.
Yes, yeah, and he does fantastic work, you know. Yeah. Trees, fucking Cemetery Beach. I don't know how
Astounding Wolfman.
I don't know how Wolfman. Oh my gosh. I don't know how Warren Ellis keeps him on like this weird leash of like, hey, we're doing books together, because like I haven't seen Jason Howard do other work recently outside of the work that he's been doing with Warren Ellis. So I'm wondering if they've got like some other secret shit that they've been planning in the background, because they've been doing stuff together on and off for like the last 4 or 5 years.
Warren Ellis learned his true name.
Oh yeah,
so he has him on a leash.
Yeah, exactly. Well, cool. I mean, I guess we're probably going to do another one of these. I want to get other people on this thing, so I just wanted to check in to see how you guys were feeling about the con. Mostly I wanted to make sure Nick was okay, because this is his first big boy con.
Yeah, big boy con.
It's
big city boy.
Big city boy con, yeah.
And yes, this has been fun, guys.
That's a joke our listeners won't get unless they were in Mike's hotel room yesterday.
Yeah, thanks guys for listening. We'll be back. I mean, there'll probably be another one of these. I don't know how we're going to chop this together, but yeah, it's been really fun. I'm glad you guys are having a good time. We've got another day and a half here, and we will, talk to you guys soon. So thanks for listening. Like I said, this isn't the end of the con discussion. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this.
We'll see how this gets cut together.
It's the end of Brian and Nick, though.
Yeah. And hopefully next we'll have some other people on here. This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, a special edition variant cover, if we must. I am here with 4 fantastic human beings.
3.
Well, 3.
Include yourself. You're fantastic, Mike.
That's true.
I'm here with Tia Vasiliou.
Hi.
I'm here with Paul Jasley.
Hello, Mike.
And I'm here with Kara Shamborsky.
Hello, Mike. I gotta say, I got chills when you just did the intro, because we never record in person. This is a magical moment.
I know. It's truly surreal that we are all here in the same room. And just like I said in the other recording that we did with Nick and Brian, I wanted to talk to some folks that were at the con this weekend to just get their overall experience about how they felt about things, what they enjoyed, what they were proud that they got to do, whatever they're really into, what made them excited about C2E2. So I want to ask the question, how was C2E2 for the two of you? I fall into a formula, Paul. Don't laugh at me.
It's all right.
Three of us.
Podcast
Three.
thing, I've been doing it for almost 200 issues, man.
Mike's not good at numbers today.
Anyways, so I want to know, what did you guys enjoy about C2E2? What was the thing that you were like, yeah, I'm glad that I came to C2E2 for? I know that's kind of a weird thing, but we talked about panels and we talked about talking to creators. So what was the thing that you really enjoyed about this con?
Friendship.
Yes, I
Let's
do.
talk about something that's real. No, that's it truly means a lot that you guys were all here at the same time. We did all get together for a quick moment. It was unbelievable to see 4 years of my life in one room. It was crazy. I can't explain it better than that. But Paul, go ahead. What did you enjoy about C2E2 other than Mike's heartfelt moments that he's almost going to cry about?
I don't want to shortchange that, 'cause that was pretty special to me too. I mean, we talk to each other pretty regularly, either on the show or on our group chat. So I feel like we're all friends. We know each other, but it is kind of nice to see everybody in person, and it's very touching.
Yes, thank you for bringing it up, Kara. Tia, how was your con experience?
Well, I mean, my spirit has left my body because I'm so exhausted at this point. Because for those of you who follow me on Twitter, I was also at Emerald City Comic Con last weekend. So
Let's clarify that currently Tia is splayed out on a bed wearing her "I will murder you" goth heels, and it's quite the picture.
yes, I helped out Stephanie Hans at her table yesterday, and that was a new experience. I've never been on that side of the table at Artist Alley before, and it's a lot of work, like major shout out to everyone who tables. You're all heroes.
Yeah, you'd think sitting at a table all day would not be that bad, but yet people always say the con was so exhausting, even though I was just at my table. I get it, I think. I've seen the wear and tear as someone brings up 10 prints to be signed by someone. It's a lot.
That's a lot.
A lot of emotionally draining stuff as you're kind of on the entire time you're at the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then also you're like, I haven't had anything to drink in 8 hours. This is fine. But then also you're like, well, at least I don't have to wait in line at the con to go pee. But, I think that probably the reason so many people get con credit is they're just dehydrated.
Yeah.
Knock on wood that I'm managing to avoid that for the second week in a row.
So you were asking what are favorite things for the con were, and things that were just terrible. And for me, I'm going to start with the just terrible because I have a sprained ankle. So I have spent C2E2 hobbling around in an air cast, and no one notices, unless you're in a wheelchair or have crutches or something sort of towards eye level where it's really obvious that you don't have full faculties at your disposal, people just don't notice. And I got jostled so many times where I was starting to just be like, oh, this is not a place for me because I can't walk anywhere. At one point I had to go to the bathroom, and the closest bathroom was in the middle of the show floor in this sunken pit that was not handicap accessible. So I had to hobble jump my way down 20 stairs to this sunken I don't even know
dungeon
pit,
basement
pit
bathroom
with
thing.
shoe shines and restrooms, and just hobbling my way through. And I got to the point where I was just everyone better get the fuck out of my way. And this comical vision was completed because I decided to decorate my air cast because it's a fairly recent development. So my air cast is covered in hot pink glitter tape and neon leopard duct tape and several jewels. Lisa Frank vomited on my air cast, and so everyone keeps thinking that I'm cosplaying someone. I'm like, no, I'm just injured. Get the fuck out of my way.
I mean, yeah, that I will say, having been to this con many, many times, that bathroom area is literally a cesspool. It's unbelievable that they still continue to force people into that area to use their facilities. It's insane. But Paul, what was your thing? What did you really enjoy about this con this year? We'll get back to Kara, what she actually enjoyed that wasn't the bathroom. Yeah.
So I got here on Friday, and literally I came to Chicago. I parked the car. I met Mike at the hotel, and we hit the con floor. And within my first 3 hours of being in Chicago, I got to interview Box Brown and Lucy Nicely, two cartoonists whose work I really, really enjoy. So I cherish that. I mean, that's great. That's why I came. And as exhausting as yesterday was, as exhausting as today was at times, the con being sort of a mess to get around, I was constantly reminded by the reason I'm here, and I think the reason most of us are here, is an enthusiasm and love for comics, which sometimes gets lost, oddly enough, at being at a Comic-Con. So I did those interviews, and then today, I had to take a little break. I was on brand. I went and got brunch, went to the record store. Like, that's what I do when I'm in a city. And then I came back to the con, and I hit the floor. I was like, boy, I'm really exhausted. But one of the first things I did is I went to a panel with Marv Wolfman and George Perez, the creators that did Crisis on Infinite Earths. Credits too long to mention, but comic book legends. And seeing their enthusiasm, these 60-year-old men basically saying, like, yeah, we spent our life making comics, doing our dream job. And them, it really reminded me, like, that's kind of why everyone's here. And then shortly after that, I hit the retailers, and there's a lot of retailers selling the CGC books. It's scummy collector stuff, speculative stuff. And literally right before the show closed, about 4:45, I found the guy who's actually selling like cool, underground, hip comics. He wanted to talk about Jack Kirby. He wanted to talk about Love and Rockets. Cool. Like, oh yeah, so this is why, the last shining moment. Like, yeah, there is hope out there. There's stuff that's positive and exciting about comics still going on.
It's tough because booths like that are really hard to tell that that's what they're selling.
It took me a long time.
The single issue problem that we always have, that like it's really hard to display these books, and when you do, they take up a ton of room. Yeah. So it's really hard to like narrow down to find those types of retailers. But like, I'm glad you at least found something, because there's a lot of, I think you said this to me earlier, there's just a lot of trash.
That's what I told the guy. I literally said to the guy, I really wish I'd find your booth sooner, because I dug through so much garbage before I found comics I actually liked. So
yeah, well, but overall, the Box Brown and Lucy Nicely interview, which you may have already listened to on this episode. I don't know how we're going to schedule it all together, but those were really fun to do, and those guys were fantastic. If you're not buying their books, you really got to, because we told them we plug all their stuff all the time, and here I am plugging it again, to be honest.
So we can go into the things that I enjoyed about this con now that I'm done whining about my foot. So aside from the friendship, which I have enjoyed with all of you, and which I'm not gonna lie, I love you all, but if Tia was a queen in Game of Thrones, I would swear my sword to her in a second. So this trip for me has been about like basking in Tia's goth queen presence and like, getting to learn from Her Majesty. So
Kara, you're gonna make me cry. Which is very goth because we're very sad.
Aside from getting to have like a fabulous time with all of you, I have super enjoyed the people watching at this con, because I didn't realize everyone at this con cosplays, and I'm just not used to the sensory overload of everyone being a different character that are now like owned by Disney. Like, if you look at how many of these IPs are owned by Disney, it's like kind of cringeworthy at this point. Like, let's be straight here. I love Disney. I love Star Wars. I love Marvel. But looking around and see how much like this one company owns, I'm kind of like, oh, burn it to the ground. But it was really great seeing a lot of people's costumes. Like, I think my favorite costume was actually, there was this little like 7 or 8 year old girl dressed as Kate Bishop, and like she was Kate Bishop, and she was with her parents. And I'm like, I'm used to talking to children because I work at an elementary school. And but because her parents were there, I figured it would be okay if I like complimented her on her outfit. Like, don't talk to children if they're clearly like by themselves for a second. That's creepy. Don't do it. But like, her parents were right there. So I was just like, oh, Kate Bishop, you look awesome. And this little punk popped her bubble gum and gave me a like side glance grin through her like mirrored sunglasses. And I was like, oh, I want to be you when I grow up.
That's fantastic.
People might have seen this tweet because it's been retweeted a lot for some reason I don't understand, but I mentioned that when we first checked in, Kara and I saw this little girl, and she was little. She was probably 3 or 4, and she was dressed as Spider-Gwen, and she was literally sobbing, but I love him, as her parents dragged her away from a cosplayer that she thought was Darth Vader, but I was not Darth. He was like a video game character with a long black cape, basically. It was adorable, but also like, girl, we need to talk. You're gonna have some problems when you get older if you don't get over that.
Yeah, I think we've definitely crossed the threshold of understanding like where people's Star Wars allegiances lie this weekend, which is really interesting because I think the phrase Anakin apologist was said at least a dozen times.
Oh, Kara?
Yes, we talked in depth about Star Wars
true, yeah.
the other night.
Well, what happened was we were at the bar sitting around this table because, like, you know, normally I would like to stand and mingle, but standing is literally not an option for me right now because I use all my standing energy to go through the con floor. And like, I had a captive audience of like most of the people we podcast with around this table. And after I have a couple drinks, I usually get yell-y, especially if in a bar situation. So I just started like screaming in everyone's faces, "What's your favorite Star Wars moment? And what's your number one Star Wars pet peeve?" And I would not shut up until everyone gave me an answer, which meant we just all got off on this tangent about how dumb so many things about the prequels are, which is always a fun conversation to have. And I'm very proud of the fact that I made Xander cry laugh by saying no one hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans.
Very
It's true,
I mean,
though.
it's the absolute truth. There was so many just little moments like that like really made this trip worth the travel. I mean, like I went to a handful of panels that were just like offbeat, weird things. Like I went to this Valiant panel. We talked about it in the other piece, but like just seeing the like other side of comics. I think this is the first con that I've been to panels in a very long time that wasn't like some weird little tiny indie thing where I was like knew someone on the panel or something, like because I've been to like all of Tia's panels. Whenever she's on a panel, usually I try
Am I
to
a
go.
weird indie thing?
Yeah, you're a weird indie thing. I'm sorry, but you know I went to like this Valiant panel. I went to I tried to pop into this Marvel panel, and it's like I realized that I've kind of crossed this line. And I probably did this years ago of having interests that are beyond like the big two. Like I still read big two. I really enjoy big two books, but like the stuff that I'm coming to a con for is shit that I could never ever get like at Midtown Comics or at a regular comic book shop, or like I'm never going to get weird little Steven Universe charms anywhere else other than at a con like this. And I know the Read Pop cons are kind of like their own big corporate thing, but at the same time you still get creators that are like still making their way up in things. And like we talked to a bunch of people that we're hopefully going to have on the show in the near future about like being independent creators who've never done big two work or only have done like maybe a little bit of boom work or something. And it really warms my heart like that folks are still coming to these shows trying to like sell themselves and sell things that they're actually making. And I got a lot of really cool stuff I don't think I would have ever gotten otherwise had not gone to this specific con, because people are only going to like Chicago or they're going to just Emerald City. Like those are the two ones that they do because they're not San Diego.
Why
and
are
they're
they
not
back
New
to
York.
back?
Yeah, I mean, why are they back to back? That's a whole
Why?
other discussion. We could do a whole episode on that. But yeah, I got a lot of really cool, unique things at this con, and I'm very happy about that.
I crossed the tentacle kitty threshold at this convention. Like every single convention that, like larger convention that I've been to over the last maybe like 5 or 6 years, there's always a tentacle kitty booth. And for those of you who are not familiar with the tentacle kitty is a plushie of a kitten head with a tentacle body. And that's the whole concept. And in the past couple of years, they've expanded their line to include additional designs. But for years, it was literally just this pink kitten head with tentacles. And it looks super cute, but it's also like, it could give you nightmares.
Is it like an adult thing?
I have no idea. I think maybe there was like a Kickstarter. I have no idea. So anyway, I just keep seeing this. I'm like, who the fuck is buying these things? And the answer this convention is me, because I realized that while like it was the last like 5 minutes that I was on the show floor, and I was like, wait a minute, I told one of my coworkers that I'd get her a present. What should I get her? And she like didn't really give me a strong parameter. She just said, get something that reminds you of me. And she like, I adore her, and she's an artist, and her sense of humor is so weird. Like whenever I send her a work email, she replies with a meme, and it's great. So I was like, I have 5 minutes. What do I buy her? a tentacle kitty. And they have mystery pouches now. I guess they are so successful with the tentacle kitty concept that Mike's just shaking his head in agony. And they now have small versions of the tentacle kitty that you can get in a mystery pouch for $15. And I was like, done. This is it. She'll love it. I'll love seeing her face when she opens it.
See, my mind was still stuck on Tia's comment of, is this an adult thing?
Yeah.
And then you're like, secret pouches. And I'm like, oh, wait,
Right?
no.
Hold on.
What is this? I'm very scared now.
Well, Mike, to follow up on your comment, I have no comment on tentacle kitty.
Oh, okay. That's okay.
But you were saying, buying stuff you wouldn't find normally. It's interesting how I felt, and me personally, and I think our group just gravitated immediately toward Artist Alley.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was talking about, that the celebration and love of comics. That's where it is. It's not, celebrating IP. It's celebrating the creative process, and that's, no matter how congested it was, I always ended up in that part of the floor because that's where I felt that vibe the strongest.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that I have been on an actual show floor and like looked or noticed any of the booths except in that I'm like trying to navigate my way to Artist Alley, like trying to get around all of that to get to Artist Alley.
Yeah.
I really like shows where Artist Alley is its own room or floor or something, but they had it like sectioned off pretty well, so you could kind of just pretend it was the only thing going on if you're us and that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
Some kid who valiantly tried to hit on me was like, well, which booth should I go check out? And I was like, go to Artist Alley and wander. You don't need anything else. And also stop talking to me.
You sweet summer child.
Oh, points for effort.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's the thing that I think I'm taking away from this con is, C2E2 is, for the longest time, I think I said it before, it's a mainstay convention for me. It was like every year I knew that in April, and this year for some reason in fucking March.
Why?
Like, let's not, I know we already said it, but I knew that I was going to be going to C2E2 for years. For 6 years straight, I went to C2E2. And I've very fond memories from almost every single year that I went. And now that I've experienced other cons like regularly, because I've been to like small local cons in West Michigan, and because I've done some of that. But now that I've been to New York City Comic Con, I've been to Emerald City, I've been to Mocha Fest, I've been to like Flame Con. This con doesn't feel as special anymore. And because I've been to cons where things are very artist focused, like FlameCon, that's all it is. There's maybe like 1 or 2 or 3 like merchant companies that are there, but otherwise it's just artists. You go to Emerald City, and the big thing about that, Artist Alley is just on its own floor. New York City Comic Con did a very similar thing where they just put the Artist Alley like in a different section. So if you're not there for all the merchandising stuff, you can just go to a different floor and hang out there all day, which is what I've done the last 3 years in a row as I've just like walked around and made eye contact with the same people. I'm like, I might come and buy something. Just stop looking at me.
I know, it's like when you puppies at a pound and you're oh, I'm sorry, I can't bring all of you home.
And I don't mean to like totally knock C2E2 because I think the consensus that we came to among our group was that it feels like this is a more fan-oriented show where you're like coming to get the exclusive stuff that you maybe wouldn't be able to get because we're in the middle of the Midwest, right? And like some of that stuff is very hard to come by. You're not going to get loot boxes at your regular shop. You're not going to get some of these weird dragon puppets that you can put on your shoulder and puppet from your hand. And so it's a very special show for that kind of stuff. And I think I used to come to the show for that reason. And now I've been spoiled and pampered, and I can actually travel to go to these things. And it's like a totally different experience. So I understand why this con is something that Reed Pop keeps pushing, but I think that there are other cons out there. If you are artist oriented and stuff and you want to look at that, that's not necessarily big 2 focused things, there are a lot of other cons that are much better about that.
And also, if you're traveling and you're spending the money for a flight, for a hotel, to eat out for every meal, this isn't the most exciting area for a con. It's really hard to get anywhere.
I mean, Javits is kind of the same way.
Javits is the same way. I mean, I also would not recommend New York Comic Con for that sort of thing either. I think that probably Emerald City is the best balance of like Artist Alley and ease of location, where like if you felt like taking a day and going to Mopop or like walking around the city, because it just sometimes it's nice to step away from the con because it is madness in this hotel lobby.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. The hotel lobby thing is a whole situation last night.
Yeah.
But we made a time of it. We had some beers in the bar downstairs, and then we came upstairs and hung out for a while, which was a riot.
It was great because when we were downstairs, I did feel like royalty for a hot second because like I've got this cast. I really shouldn't be on my legs. So the boys like very quickly found me a chair that I could sit in, and everyone just kind of stood around me. I'm like, oh, is this what it's like to be Cersei Lannister?
Well, the best part about that is like then you would have like intimate one-on-one conversations with people who were sitting in the other
They
chair.
would have to like come and kneel at your side.
Like if you're trying to model yourself after the Queen Goth over here, like you've nailed it because now you have like people that want to have close, intimate conversations with you to make sure that you'll lean their way when the ruling comes down.
I'm really glad I could pass that torch because last night I passed out really early. I was just like, oh, I've been drinking bourbon every night for like 10 days straight. Maybe sleep, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, and tonight we're chilling out. Paul and I are just going to be drinking beers and reading comics because it's Sunday night and that's what you do.
Yeah.
And you guys are going out to be
I don't
cool
know
kids
what we're
in the
doing.
city.
I don't know.
Anyway, Paul, what are your final thoughts about C2E2 2019?
Honestly, this is the first year I've been to C2E2. As weird as that sounds, because I live so close to Chicago. Just my previous job, I didn't have this weekend off normally, so I could actually make it down. The vibe was a little weird. I think going to Emerald City last year kind of spoiled me.
Oh, sure.
That was like one of the first big cons I went to, but overall, I was able to absorb some of that passion for comics that I've talked about so far. Because honestly, it's easy to get burned out on comics. It's easy to fall into a rut, and especially if you're reading comic book Twitter, it's very easy to get burned out and disillusioned with the whole thing. But to have just a few minutes to talk to a creator you like, even a creator you just discovered randomly, to have a few interaction with them, like it is a nice reminder. And I'll bring it up again. Like it was very, very touching and emotional for me to see Marv Wolfman and George Perez, two guys, industry legends, best friends who spent life making comics, and they were just like, so excited to see everybody. And it was a nice reminder of like this small, weird world that we all love. It means something to a lot of people.
Yeah, definitely. And you can get a really cool commission of your dog if you want, right?
Exactly.
That's a cool thing.
Or your favorite pro wrestler. Or,
yeah. Tia, what about you?
What was the question?
What are your final thoughts on C2E2 2019 overall?
I'm glad we could all like converge in one spot because we have not all met in person, so that was cool.
4 years somehow.
Yeah. I think that my spring show is still Emerald City. I think like I've been to C2E2. The vibe is not quite my vibe. I'm not sure I would come back, but it was definitely a time.
Well said.
Yes, well said. Kara, and finally, what about you?
Well, I kind of agree with Paul in terms of like really appreciating that like conventions like this in places where there might not be a whole lot of comic options are super important, and you can just see people get so excited. And like for me personally, even though overall I think I agree with Tia in terms of I would prefer Emerald City at this point in terms of the spring conventions, I will admit that when I first walked into C2E2 on Friday night, it was like an Alan Menken orchestral swell of Disney music playing at the back of my head, and just like this big grin got on my face, and I was just like, my people! I was like, look at all these nerds! Hi, everyone! And it was just like, I just felt really like light and jubilant, and then remembered that I was hobbling everywhere. But there was this one moment of purity where I was like, yes.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think I've kind of expressed where I'm at. I do love C2E2. Will always have like a place in my heart because it was the first big con that I was like, I felt like a regular at, even though I would see artists and I would go get things signed, and I was nervous wreck, and whatever you work on that, you get better over time. But like coming back here, it felt like familiar smells for better or for worse.
Sure.
Familiar layouts of like the building, like understanding, oh, remember, 4 years ago when they did this, remember 5-6 years ago, it was actually on this other floor and it changed the whole dynamic because it split the con in a way so that it didn't feel like too overcrowded. Like reflecting upon all of that was really, really nice. I've had like a nice nostalgic moment, and it helps that a lot of the people on this show were people that were coming to the con with me like 6, 7, 8 years ago. I mean, this con's been going on for 10 years, and like I was there year 1 through year 6, and it's seeing it this year. And again, going back on I've been to these other cons, and now I see kind of how it is, why people like this one, why people don't like it. I feel like my horizons have been broadened in a lot of ways, and I do appreciate this con for what it is. But yeah, it's Chicago, and I'm like a sucker for that. So it'll always just be like there. Like I'll always want to come back. But if we have to make the choice next year, I think it's going to be C2E2, or excuse me, it's going to be Emerald City, because yeah, I think as a group, this whole I read comic books, we're very much more artist oriented. We're more towards like what the vibe is in Seattle, and yeah, it's gonna be a bummer. Like maybe I'll come on my own to C2E2, but yeah, I really love this con. For a lot of weird reasons. I'm telling you, the smells of this building are fucking weird, and I had flashbacks.
Wow.
So like because the story of this con that like breaks my heart, and I promise I'll cut this short, but real quick. I mean, 4 years ago I moved from Michigan to New York, and in the worst thing ever, don't ever do this as a person, I went to this con and then immediately got on a flight to go to New York and move there. And like my now fiance was there, like all my friends were there, and it was just like, what the fuck am I doing? Why didn't I give myself an extra week, right? So like I have this weird like heartstrings thing that pulls on me from this con, because like I made this weird decision, and so I'm like very emotional at the end of the con to be like, no, I have to get on a plane and go back. But I know like I'm still gonna keep in contact with my friends. Like things haven't changed to where like I'm never gonna see anybody, and it wasn't like that when I left. But like it's just this weird like oh shit moment kind of going through my head. But like I have you fantastic people here to like ease the burden of leaving.
I'm literally gonna see you at work on Tuesday.
I know, and that's where like things have changed, and it's good. Like this con is a totally different experience than what I like think about for cons now, and like now I know how C2E2 is, and now I know how these other cons are. Like I've grown as a comic book fan who runs this fucking podcast and does all this stuff. So anyways, yeah,
I do think it's interesting to talk about the vibes of different cons, because I mean a lot of pop culture is pretty homogenous.
Oh, sure.
So it's nice to see like there is a variety of stuff out there and a different stuff. I think, not to be too harsh on this con, but it's a different vibe. It
totally
might not work for you, but I do think it is, in a world where so much pop culture and media is monochrome.
Yeah.
To have some differences in your experiences is kind of nice. So
yeah, and we'll see how that plays out as Disney starts to just consume the rest of the world.
They own
in 2025, it may just be the Disney cons.
Disney con. Well, they have D23.
That's true. Well, anyways, thank you guys for taking the time today. I know it's Sunday and it's late, and we went out and had huge burgers for dinner. But I appreciate you guys spending the time, as always. So thanks. We'll be back next week with a regular episode, I promise everyone.